You're listening to Rise Above, a Rogers Behavioral Health podcast, where we sit down with Rogers experts who are changing the way the world views mental health and addiction.
When a child goes off to college, it's not only a huge moment for them, but it's a huge moment for their parents. I still remember when I went off to college, I remember my mom crying in the garage. I thought she was being silly. I'm a parent now, and I get it. It's a stressful situation, I'm sure, and a situation with a lot of uncertainty. Is my child ready for school? Am I ready for them to be out of the house? So to learn more about making sure your child is ready for their next step and to make sure as a parent you're ready for your next step as well, I brought in an expert today. With me is Zach Stenzel, a therapist here at Rogers Behavioral Health. Zach, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first off, right off the bat, we are recording this in the summer. Kids have graduated high school. They are on their way to college in the fall. Is it too late for their parents to listen to this right now?
It is never too late to take this advice. If you are just thinking about this process, or if you're a student about to launch and you're worried about what is ahead of you, if you're a parent who is worried about what this transition is going to be like, it is not too late to listen to this. It's not too late to read about this. Heck, if your kid is already in college and you've still got concerns or you're not sure how things are going, it's worth a listen.
Great. All right. Well, then I guess my first question is what kind of emotions do you think parents and children are going through at this stage, going off to college?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big time. It's a big transition, one of the bigger ones that most people experience. And so there's a wide range of emotions. For students specifically, there's this feeling of anticipation and excitedness of, yes, I'm finally stepping into adulthood. Maybe I'm leaving my hometown. Maybe I'm staying close by, but I'm kind of launching out. So there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of energy, but also there can be a lot of fear of, this might be the first time I'm leaving my hometown. This might be, sad because I'm going to be missing some of my friends. And for parents, you can have kind of a similar range of emotions of pride of like, wow, we did it. We as parents launched our child successfully and they're ready to go on into, the next step of the real world. But there can also be feelings of grief, feelings of, maybe you are now becoming an empty nester and no one else is at home. Or maybe, you love your children. You want to spend time with them and you're trying to savor every moment. And now as they're launching off to college, you're, changing the whole routine and this whole way of life that you've built for, in theory, 18 years.
Right. Well, okay. So in that case, how can a student prepare themselves mentally for going off to school?
Great question. To prepare yourself as a student, make sure that you're not just going into it with, I know everything already, Dad, get off my back mentality. Lean on the people that you have. Lean on the people in your circle. Gather information with friends who are doing the same thing, with family members who have gone through that transition, through mentors or maybe some older people that who are currently in college. And ask what they did or what they wish they knew beforehand, as well as think of some skills ahead of time. Think of some things that you can do when you are, feeling anxious in this transition. It's a lot easier to think of things to do to help your anxiety before you get into that anxious situation. And so finding a batch of coping skills that work for you ahead of time is going to be super crucial.
Do you have any examples? What type of coping skills, like a breathing exercise or?
Yeah, I mean, as a therapist, every other therapist I've ever met affirms for me that they tell their patients and clients to breathe deeply, and that makes me feel good that it works. But some of my favorites with that deep breathing or specific mindfulness techniques. Mindfulness is just the practice of bringing ourselves back to the present moment rather than letting anxiety bring our thoughts forward into the future and what if. One of my favorites is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It really is just going through all the senses. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. What that does is allow your brain to really focus on what am I actually seeing. Some people like to dig deeper into like an object in the room and describe it in as much detail as possible. Going for a walk is also a great one. Getting yourself some fresh air, some exercise, mindfully engaging on that walk, noticing the different things that you're seeing. Is there a dog in the window or the leaves falling, anything like that?
So then I guess, on that same note, like what challenges might a student face while adjusting to college life?
Yes. The challenges can range. For a child who grew up in a more controlling household or one where they didn't have as much freedom, the switch to college can be a pretty big jump. As they've gone from everything being controlled to a huge breath of freedom for them. And so getting used to, the responsibilities of that freedom and knowing that things aren't going to be the same, preparing yourself ahead of time to know that, I might need to do things differently. I might need to ask for help. I might need to call home and say, how do I do my laundry on my own? What's the sort of food should I buy at the grocery store? How do I cook this stuff? If they've never had the opportunity to do that, then there's not really a class on that in college most of the time. For students who maybe had that transition a little bit easier, who have made it in that, being there as a cornerstone to help their fellow classmates and knowing that most college campuses have staff available, resident assistants, resident directors, whatever that looks like on your college campus, of people to help guide you through this transition.
So now from the reverse angle, if you will, parents, what can parents do to help a child transition to college?
Yeah. So like we talked about earlier, even if you're just starting this now, that process can look in a few different ways. Ideally, your job as a parent is to get your child to launch into the world to become a functioning adult. What that means is when they're really young, when they're babies and toddlers, you've kind of got full control. As a baby, they can't feed themselves. They can't, get through life without someone there to help them. But as they grow up, they start to learn that they can do things on their own. As they're growing and growing more, home is a safe environment where they have the opportunity to grow and learn. And more importantly, they have the opportunity to fail in an environment where they know that they are still going to be taken care of. And so as you are getting your child ready, starting through middle school and high school, giving them opportunities to prove that they can be responsible, giving them freedom and letting them deal with the natural consequences of meeting those responsibilities or falling short of them. That way, by the time they're a senior in high school, it shouldn't be that much different of a transition from high school to college because they're already used to a certain level of responsibility and used to a certain level of freedom. If you haven't done this and this hasn't been a main priority for you as a parent, like I said, it's not too late.
There's still time to teach them laundry right now.
Absolutely. Use whatever time you do have to think about those important life lessons and things that you wish that you knew going into college. Making sure that communication is something that's big as well. Communication is something that everyone needs, and giving them the skills, modeling healthy communication is really important. If you make assumptions about what your child knows and your child makes assumption about what you know, there's a lot of things that could fall through the cracks. And so having conversation of, hey, how prepared do you feel for this or that expectation when you're in college? How do you feel about this transition? What can I do to help? One of the biggest things that you can do is offer support and, give some specific examples of like, hey, would it be helpful if I taught you how to cook this meal? Would it be helpful if we went to a laundromat together? Or you can leave it more open-ended and say, what would be helpful for me as your parent as you're making this transition? Because that summer before college can be really busy trying to get every little ounce of their hometown in and see their friends, but making sure that you can still spend time together.
Sure. Well, what about, is there anything that a parent shouldn't do?
Yeah. So in terms of things that you shouldn't do, don't just try and be a problem solver. Don't just say, oh, here's a problem, let me fix it. Listen to the emotions, listen to the problems, and validate without just trying to fix everything. It's also really important, as we think about accommodations. Accommodations are anything that usually a parent or authority figure does to take away or remove anxiety from a child. And so as someone who's working with children and adolescents with anxiety, this is something super common that we see. If there's a child who is afraid of crowds, the parents will let them stay home. If there's a child who's afraid of germs, they'll open the door for them.
Whatever makes it easier, right?
Exactly. And in the moment, accommodations make a lot of sense. And you might even feel like you're doing the right thing because you are helping your child. I often talk about that is kind of the mama or papa bear effect, where like, my kid's anxious, I want to protect them. Unfortunately, in the long run, this teaches a cycle of either I need someone to come rescue me, or the things that I'm anxious about are actually that dangerous because my parents have had to rescue me. If you're able to recognize and start kind of taking an inventory of all the ways that you think you already accommodate, you can start to pull those back and recognize they have the chance to push through their anxiety. They have the chance to push through the difficulties, and that's going to help bolster their confidence as they're making these difficult transitions.
So humor me for a second. If you're talking to a parent, what can a parent do just to ease their own fears about their child, going off to school?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, communication is going to be a big part of that. Just like your child's going to have expectations, you're going to have expectations. Communicate those clearly. If you want to hear from your child while they're making this transition, talk to them about what a reasonable amount of time that they can spend communicating with you. Maybe that first week they're going to text and call you a little bit more. And then as they transition through college and kind of understand the rhythm of their own life moving forward, you'll be able to set up. Maybe there are some families that having a weekly call on the weekends is going to work. And there are some that maybe a few texts a week will work instead. Figuring out what's going to satiate some of your anxieties to, have your children know that they can talk to you and communicate, yep, I'm doing great, or no, I need some support in this.
I was going to say on that, the child might not be willing to say, no, I need some support in this. Mm-hmm. What can a parent do to offer support or, see the signs that maybe they should be concerned about things?
Yeah, warning signs look different for everyone. Typical ones that I often see are a lack of communication altogether. If they're not answering phone calls, if they're not answering texts, or if they're being super short, or if you notice that they might be isolating more often. They're not engaging in the activities that they would typically engage in. They're not, finding as much joy in the fun things, or they find themselves not wanting to spend time with those that they care about. If you start to hear about a lack of attendance of classes as the anxiety or depression may be too high and they're skipping some of their responsibilities, or if you hear about them engaging in unsafe behavior, talking with other parents and friends, having that kind of support network of people they can reach out to. Maybe your child doesn't feel as comfortable telling you about the difficulty that they're having, but they feel comfortable telling another trusted adult or another friend who can share a brief update with a parent as well.
So before I let you go, is there anything else that you'd want to talk to families about or tell families that are going through this situation or this transition?
Absolutely. This is a tough time. I want to validate that, while as exciting as this is for both the children and the parents, it can also be a really stressful time for both the children and the parents. Give yourself a little bit of grace and make sure that you are engaging in self-care. If you're a college student and you're just transitioning into this, make sure you're taking time not to only focus on your studies. Make sure to have some fun. Go out with some friends, go see a concert, go get dinner together, go play some games on the lawn. Enjoy this time. If you're a parent, use this extra time that you have that you previously spent pouring into your children to pour into yourselves or pour into your marriage. Self-care is really important. Go on a date night with your spouse or go on a date night with yourself. Hang out with your friends. Read a book that doesn't have to do with parenting. Give yourself a permission to have a nice hot bath and a wonderful meal.
Great advice, Zach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thanks for listening to Rise Above, a podcast from Rogers Behavioral Health. Be sure to like and subscribe to be notified of new episodes. As always, if you or someone you care about is struggling with a mental health or substance use disorder, visit rogersbh.org for a free mental health screening.